Well, good day, everyone, everywhere, and special greetings to all those seated in heavenly places in Jesus. You're listening to Cross the Border, and I'm Nicholas. This is my daily Bible study program, and we're in the book of Daniel. We are in Daniel 5, verse 1. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. Now this Belshazzar was a descendant, if not a direct son of Nebuchadnezzar. So he now has the kingdom. Verse 2, Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, so he made a great party, basically. 1,000 of his lords, a great feast. And while he tasted the wine, commanded, got this bright idea, right? Not all ideas you have in a moment are bright. He commanded to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine, and praised the gods of gold, and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. So this hand appears in a well-lighted place where it would definitely be noticed. And you can imagine the fright of people seeing a hand all by itself writing on the wall. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another. Yes, his knees are banging together. He is so frightened and so shaken by what he is seeing there. And the king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake, and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing, and show me the interpretation thereof, shall be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. We have here Belshazzar, the king, very gay, in the olden meaning of the word gay, that is, but all of a sudden very gloomy, and in straits in the fullness of his sufficiency. See how he affronts God, and God affrights him. So he affronts God by bringing the vessels from the temple. And this was a man who had no regard for God, obviously. He did not learn any of the lessons that his father Nebuchadnezzar had learned before him. He did not learn from his father's great trial, that great trial that he went through 7 years. You'd think that he would have learned, but he learned nothing. See how he affronts God, and God affrights him. And wait, what will be the issue of this contest, whether he that hardened his heart against God prospered. So he definitely had hardened his heart against God. Will he prosper? Well, we know the end of the tale, but see how the king affronted God and put contempt upon him. He made a great feast and banquet of wine. Probably it was some anniversary solemnity in honor of his birthday or coronation day or in honor of some of their idols. Historians say that Cyrus, who is now with his army besieging Babylon, knew of this feast and presuming that they then would be off their guard, buried in sleep and wine, took that opportunity to attack the city, and so with the more ease made himself master of it. Belshazzar, upon this occasion, invited thousands of his lords to come and drink with him. Perhaps they were such as had signalized themselves in defense of the city against the besiegers, or these were his great council of war, with whom, when they had well drunk, he would advise what was further to be done. And they were to look upon it as a great favor that he drank wine before them, for it was the pride of those eastern kings to be seldom seen. He drank wine before them. He made this feast as Ahasuerus did, to show the honor of his majesty. Now in this sumptuous feast, he put an affront upon the providence of God and bade defiance to his judgments. His city was now besieged. A powerful enemy was at his gates. His life and kingdom lay at stake. In all the land of the Lord, in all this land, the hand of the Lord had gone out against him, and by it he called him to weeping and mourning and girding with sackcloth. God's voice cried in the city, as Jonah to Nineveh, yet 40 days or fewer, and Babylon shall be destroyed. He should therefore, like the king of Nineveh, have proclaimed a fast, but as one resolved to walk contrary to God, he proclaims a feast, and beheld joy and gladness, slaying oxen, killing sheep, eating flesh, and drinking wine, as if he dared the Almighty to do his worst. To show how little fear he had of being forced to surrender for want of provisions, he spent thus extravagantly. Note, security and sensuality are sad presages of approaching ruin. Those that will not be warned by judgments of God may be expected to be wounded by them. He put an affront upon the temple of God and bade defiance to his sanctuary. While he tasted the wine, he commanded to bring the vessels of the temple, that they might drink in them. When he tasted how rich and fine the wine was, "Oh," said he, "it is a pity, but we should have holy vessels to drink such delicious wine as this in," which was looked upon as a piece of wit. And to carry the humor, the vessels of the temple were immediately sent for. Nay, there seems to have been something more in it than a frolic, and that it was done in a malicious despite to the God of Israel. The heart of his people was very much upon those sacred vessels, as appears from their principal care at their return was about these. Now, we may suppose they had an expectation of their deliverance approaching, reckoning the 70 years of their captivity near a period, and some of them might perhaps have given out some words to that purport, that shortly they should have the vessels of the sanctuary restored to them. So Belshazzar, in defiance of the expectation of the Jewish captives, brings out the vessels of the temple. See, and in defiance of which Belshazzar here proclaims them to be his own. He will keep them in store no longer, but will make use of them among his own plate. Note that mirth is sinful indeed, and fills the measure of men's iniquity apace, which profanes sacred things and jests with them. This ripened Babylon for ruin, that no songs would serve them but the songs of Zion, no vessel but the vessels of the sanctuary. Let those who thus sacrilegiously alienate what is dedicated to God and his honor know that he will not be mocked. He put an affront upon God himself and bade defiance to his deity, for they drunk wine and praised the gods of gold and silver. They gave that glory to images, the work of their own hands, and creatures of their own fancy, which is due to the true and living God only. They praised them either with sacrifices offered to them, or with songs sung in honor of them. When their heads were giddy, and their hearts merry with wine, they were in the fittest frame to praise the gods of gold and silver, wood and stone. For one would think that men in their senses, who had the command of a clear and sober thought, would not be guilty of so gross an absurdity. They must be intoxicated ere they could be so infatuated. Drunken worshippers, who are not men, but beasts, are the most proper for the service of dunghill deities that are not gods, but devils. They have erred through wine. They drank wine and praised their idol gods as if they had been the founders of their feasts and the givers of all good things to them. Or when they were drinking wine, they praised their gods by drinking health to them. And the king drank wine before them. That is, he began the health first to his god, and then to the other, till they went through the bestial or farrago of them, those of wood and stone not excepted. Note, immorality and impiety, vice and profaneness, strengthen the hands and advance the interests one of another. Drunken frolics were an introduction to idolatry, and when idolatrous healths were shoeing horn to further drunkenness. See how God affrighted the king and struck a terror upon him. Belshazzar and his lords are in the midst of their revels, the cups going round apace, and all upon merry pine, drinking confusion, merry pin, drinking confusion, it may be, to Cyrus and his army, and roaring out huzzahs in confidence of the speedy raising of the siege. But the hour had come when that must be fulfilled, which had been long ago said of the king of Babylon, when his city should be besieged by the Persians and Medes. In Isaiah 21, 2 and 4, the night of my pleasure he has turned into fear to me. The mirth of this ball at court must be spoiled, and a damp cast upon their jollity, though the king himself be master of the revels. Immediately, when God speaks the word, we have him in all his guests in the utmost confusion, and the end of their mirth is heaviness. 1. There appear the fingers of a man's hand writing on the plaster of the wall before the king's face. The angel Gabriel, say the rabbin, directing these fingers and writing by them. That divine hand, says the rabbi of our own, Dr. Lightfoot, that had written the 2 tables of the law to his people, now writes the doom of Babel and Belshazzar upon the wall. There was nothing sent to frighten them, which made a noise, or threatened their lives, no claps of thunder, nor flashes of lightning, no destroying angel with his sword drawn in his hand, only a pen in the hand, writing upon a wall over against a candlestick, where they might all see it by the light of their own candle. Note, God's written word is sufficient to put the proudest, boldest sinners into fright, when he is pleased to give it the setting on. The king saw the part of the hand that wrote, but saw not the person whose hand it was, which made the thing more frightful. Note, what we see of God, the part of the hand that writes in the book of the creatures and the book of the scriptures, lo, these are parts of his ways, may serve to possess us with awful thoughts concerning that of God which we do not see. If this be the finger of God, what is his arm made bare? And what is he? The king is immediately seized with a panic fear. His countenance was changed. His color went and came. The joints of his loins were loose, so that he had no strength in them, but was struck with a pain in his back, as is usual in a great fright. His knees smote one against another, so violently did he tremble like an aspen leaf. And what was the matter? Why is he in such a fright? He perceives not what is written. And how does he know but it may be some happy presage of his deliverance to him and to his kingdom? But the business was, his thoughts troubled him. His own guilty conscience flew in his face, and told him that he had no reason to expect any good news from heaven, and that the hand of an angel could write nothing but terror to him. He that knew himself liable to the justice of God immediately concluded this to be an arrest in his name, a summons to appear before him. Note, God can soon awaken the most secure and make the heart of the stoutest sinner to tremble, and there needs no more to do it than to let loose his own thoughts upon him. They will soon play the tyrant and give him trouble enough. The wise men of Babylon are immediately called in to see what they can make of this writing upon the wall. The king cried aloud, as one in haste, as one in earnest, to bring the whole college of magicians, to try if they can read this writing and show the interpretation of it. For the king and all his lords cannot pretend to it. It is out of their sphere, the study of divine revelation such as they had, or thought they had, and converse with the world of the spirits, whereby the heathen confined to one profession, and no other meddled in it. But what is written to us by the finger of God is legible to all. Whoever will may read the mind of God in the Scriptures. To engage these wise men to exert the utmost of their skill in this matter, and provoke them to an emulation in the attempt, he promised that whoever would give him a satisfactory account of this writing should be dignified with the highest honors of the court. He knew that these pretenders to wisdom aimed at and what would please them, and therefore promised them a scarlet robe and a gold chain, glorious things in the eyes of those that know no better. He should be chief minister of the state, the third ruler in the kingdom, next to the king and his heir apparent. The king is disappointed in his expectations from them. They can none of them read the writing, much less interpret it, which increases the king's confusion. He likes the thing yet worse and worse, and fears that mischief is towards him. His lords also, that they had been partners with him in his jollity, are now sharers with him in his terrors. They also were astonished at their wits' end, and neither their numbers nor their refreshment by wine would serve to keep up their spirits. The reason why the wise men could not read the writings was not because it was written in any language or characters unknown to them, but God either cast a mist before their eyes, or put such confusion upon their spirits that they could not read it, that the honor of expounding this mystical writing might be reserved for Daniel. Note, the terror of an awakened, convinced conscience may justly be increased by the utter insufficiency of all creatures to give it ease or satisfaction. Verse 10. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. And the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There is a man in thy kingdom, in whom the spirit of the holy gods, and in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. Forasmuch as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams, and showing of hard sentences, and dissolving of doubts, were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show thee the interpretation. Then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have heard of thee, that the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known the interpretation thereof, but they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee that thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now if thou canst read the writing, and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet, and have a gold chain about thy neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king, and make known to him the interpretation. O thou king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom, and majesty and glory and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would he slew, and whom he would he kept alive, and whom he would he set up, and whom he would he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointeth over it whomsoever he will. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven. And they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them. And thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know. And the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Many, tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Many. God has numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel. Thou art weighed in the balances, and art found wanting. Peres. The kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be third ruler in the kingdom, a kingdom that is coming to an end. No wonder he said, Let thy gifts be to thyself. Here is the information given to the king by the queen mother concerning Daniel, how he was fit to be consulted in the difficult case. It is supposed that the queen was the widow of evil Merodach, and was that famous Nitocris whom Herodotus mentions as a woman of extraordinary prudence. She was not present at the feast, as the king's wives and concubines were. It is not agreeable to her age and gravity to keep a merry night, but tidings of the fright which the king and his lords were put into being brought her to brought to her apartment, she came herself to the banqueting house and recommended to the king a physician for his melancholy. She entreated him not to be discouraged by the insufficiency of his wise men to solve this riddle, for that there was a man in his kingdom that had more than once helped his grandfather at such a dead lift, and no doubt could help him. She could not undertake to read the writing herself, but directed to him that one could. Let Daniel be called now, who should have been called first. Now observe the high character she gives of Daniel. He is a man in whom the Spirit of the Holy Gods is the Spirit of the Holy Gods, who has something in him more than human, not only the spirit of a man, which in all is the candle of the Lord, but a divine spirit. According to the language of her country and religion, she could not give a higher encomium of any man. She speaks honorably of him as a man that had an admirably good head, light and understanding and wisdom like the wisdom of the gods were found in him. Such an insight that he into things secret, and such a foresight of things to come, that it was evident that he was divinely inspired. He had knowledge and understanding beyond all other wise men for interpreting dreams, explaining enigmas or hard sentences, untying knots and resolving doubts. Solomon had a wonderful sagacity of this kind, but it should seem that in Daniel had more of an immediate divine direction. Behold, a greater than Solomon himself is here. Yet what was the wisdom of them both compared with the treasures and wisdom hidden in Christ? He had an admirably good heart. An excellent spirit was found in him, which was a great ornament to his wisdom and knowledge, and qualified him to receive that gift. For God gives to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. He was of a humble, holy, heavenly spirit, had a devout and gracious spirit, a spirit of zeal for the glory of God and the good of men. This was indeed an excellent spirit. The account she gives with the respect that Nebuchadnezzar had for him. He was much in his favor, and was preferred by him. The king, thy father, that is thy grandfather, but even to many generations, Nebuchadnezzar might well be called the father of that royal family, for he it was that raised it to such a pitch of grandeur. The king, I say, thy father, made him master of the magicians. Perhaps Belshazzar had sometimes in his pride spoken slightly of Nebuchadnezzar and his politics and the methods of his government and the ministers he employed, and thought himself wiser than he. And therefore his mother harps upon that. The king, I say, thy father, whose good management all thou hast owing. He pronounced him chief of, and gave him dominion over all the wise men of Babylon, and named him Belteshazzar according to the name of his God, thinking thereby to put honor upon him. But Daniel, by constantly making use of his Jewish name himself, which he resolved to keep in token of his faithful adherence to his religion, had worn out that name. Only the queen dowager remembered it. Otherwise he was generally called Daniel. Note, it is a very good office to revive the remembrance of the good services of worthy men, who are themselves modest and willing that they should be forgotten. The motion she makes concerning him, let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. By this it appears that Daniel was now forgotten at court. Belshazzar was a stranger to him, knew not that he had such a jewel in his kingdom. With the new king there came in a new ministry, and the old one was laid aside. Note, there are many great valuable men, and such as might be made very useful, that lie long buried in obscurity, and some that have done eminent services that live to be overlooked and take no notice of. But whatever men are, God is not unrighteous to forget the services done to his kingdom. Daniel, being turned out of his place, lived privately and sought not any opportunity to come into notice again. Yet he lived near the court and within call, though Babylon was now besieged, that he might be ready, if there were occasion, to do any good office, by that interest he had among the great ones, for the children of his people. But Providence so ordered it that now, just at the fall of that monarchy, he should by the queen's means be brought to court again, that he might lie there ready for preferment in the ensuing government. Thus do the righteous shine forth out of obscurity, and before honor is humility. The introducing of Daniel to the king, and his request to him to read and expound the writing. Daniel was brought in before the king. He was now nearly 90 years of age, so that his years, his honors, and former preferments might have entitled him to a free admission into the king's presence. Yet he was willing to be conducted in as a stranger by the master of ceremonies. Note 1. The king asked, and with an air of haughtiness, "Art thou that Daniel who art the children of the children of the captivity?" Being a Jew and a captive, he was loth to be beholden to him if he could help. 2. He tells him what an encomium he had heard of him, that the spirit of the gods was in him, and he had sent for him to try whether he deserved so high a character or no. 3. He acknowledged that all the wise men of Babylon were baffled. They could not read this writing, nor show the interpretation. But he promises him the same rewards that he'd promised them if he would do it. It was strange that the magicians, when now and in Nebuchadnezzar's time, once and again they were nonplussed, did not attempt something to save their credit, if they had with a good assurance said, "This is the meaning of such and such, of such a dream, such a writing," who could disprove them. But God so ordered it that they had nothing to say at all. As when Christ was born, the heathen oracles were struck dumb. 3. The interpretations which Daniel gave of these mystic characters, which was so far from easing the king of his fears, that we may suppose it increased them rather. Daniel was now in years, and Belshazzar was young, and therefore he seems to take greater liberty of dealing plainly and roughly with him than he had done upon like occasions with Nebuchadnezzar. In reproving any man, especially great men, there is need of wisdom to consider all circumstances, for they are the reproofs of instruction that are the way of life. In Daniel's discourse here, he undertakes to read the writing which gave them this alarm, and to show them the interpretation of it. He slights the offer he made him of rewards, is not pleased that it was mentioned, for he is not one of those that divine for money. What gratuities Nebuchadnezzar gave him afterwards he gladly accepted, but he scorned to bargain for them, or to read the writing to the king for and in consideration of such and such honors promised him. No, let thy gifts be to thyself, for they will not be long thine, and give thy fee to another, to any of the wise men whom thou wouldest have most wished to earn it. I value it not. Daniel sees his kingdom now at its last grasp, and therefore looks with contempt upon his gifts and rewards. And thus should we despise all the gifts and rewards that this world can give, did we see, as we may by faith, its final period hastening on. Let it give its perishing gifts to another. There are better gifts which we have our eyes and hearts upon, but let us do our duty in the world, do it all the real service we can, read God's writing to it in a profession of religion, and by an agreeable conversation make known the interpretation of it, and then trust God for his gifts, his rewards, in comparison with which all the world can give us is mere trash and trifles. he largely recounts God's dealings with his father Nebuchadnezzar. He describes the dignity and power which the divine providence had advanced Nebuchadnezzar. He sets before him the sins which Nebuchadnezzar had been guilty of, and he tells them that he knew all of these things. But that was not all. He behaved insolently towards the God above him, and grew proud and haughty. His heart was lifted up, and there his sin and his ruin began. His mind was hardened in pride, hardened against the commands of God and his judgments. He was willful and obstinate, and neither the word of God nor his rod made any lasting impression upon him. No, pride is a sin that hardens the heart in all other sin and renders the means of repentance and reformation ineffectual. He reminds him of the judgments of God that were brought upon him for his pride and obstinacy, how he was deprived of his reason and so deposed from his kingly throne, speaking of Nebuchadnezzar, his father, or his grandfather, really. In God's name, he exhibits articles of impeachment before Belshazzar. Before he reads him his doom from the handwriting on the wall, he shows him his crime, that God may be justified when he speaks and clear when he judges. So he had received warnings, judgments from God, and he ignored them all and goes and has a party instead of taking anything seriously. That which he lays to his charges, that he had not taken warnings by the judgments of God upon his father. Thou his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thy heart, though thou knewest all this. It is a great offense to God if our hearts be not humbled before him to comply both with his precepts and with his providences, humbled by repentance, obedience, and patience. Nay, he expects from the greatest of men that their hearts should be humbled before him, by an acknowledgement that, great as they are, to him they are accountable. And it is a great aggravation of the humbleness of our hearts when we know enough to humble them, but do not consider and improve it. Particularly when we know how others have been broken that would not bend, how others have fallen that would not stoop, and yet we continue stiff and inflexible. It makes the sin of children the more heinous if they tread in the steps of their parents' wickedness, though they have seen how dearly it has cost them, and how pernicious the consequences of it have been. Do we know this? Do we know all this? And yet are we not humbled? That he had affronted God more impudently than Nebuchadnezzar himself had done, witnessed the revels of this very night, in the midst of which he was seized with this horror. Thou hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, hast swelled with rage against him, and taken up arms against his crown and dignity, in this particular instance, that thou hast profaned the vessels of his house, and made the utensils of his sanctuary instruments of thy iniquity, and in the actual design contempt of him, which has praised the gods of silver and gold, which see not, nor hear, nor know anything, as if they were to be preferred before the God that sees and hears and knows everything. Sinners that are resolved to go on in sin are well enough pleased with their gods that neither see nor hear nor know, for then they may sin securely, but they will find, to their confusion, that though those are the gods they choose, those are not the gods they must be judged by, but one to whom all things are naked and open. He that had not answered the end of his creation and maintenance, the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified? This is a general charge, which stands good against all. Let us consider how we shall answer it. Observe, our dependence upon God as our Creator, Preserver, Benefactor, Owner, and Ruler. Not only from His hand our breath was at first, but in His hand our breath is still. It is He that holds our souls in life, and if He take away our breath, we die. Our times being in His hand, so is our breath, by which our times are measured. In Him we live and move and have our being. We live by Him, live upon Him, and cannot live without Him. The way of man is not in himself, not at his own command, at his own disposal, but his are all our ways. For our hearts are in His hand, and so are the hearts of all men, even of kings, who seem to act most as free agents. Our duty to God in consideration of this dependence, we ought to glorify Him, devote ourselves to His honor, and employ ourselves in His service, to make it our care to please Him, and our business to praise Him. Our default in this duty, notwithstanding that dependence, we have not done it, for we have all sinned and come short of the glory of God. This is the indictment against Belshazzar. There needs no proof. It is made good by the notorious evidence of the fact, and his own conscience cannot but plead guilty to it, and therefore he now proceeds to read the sentence as he found it written on the wall. Then, says Daniel, when thou hast come to such a height of impiety as thus to trample upon the most sacred things, then thou wast in the midst of thy sacrilegious idolatrous feasts, then was the part of the hand, the writing finger sent from Him, from that God whom thou didst so daringly affront, and who had borne so long with thee, but would bear no longer. He sent them, and this writing thou now seest was written. It is He that now writes bitter things against thee, and makes thee to possess thy iniquities. Note, as the sin of sinners is written in the book of God's omniscience, so the doom of sinners is written in the book of God's law. And the day is coming when those books shall be opened, and they shall be judged by them. Now the writing was many tekel upharsin. It is well that we have an authentic exposition of these words annexed, else we could make little of them. So concise are they, the signification of them. He has numbered, He has weighed, and they divide. The Chaldean wise men, because they knew not that there is but one God only, could not understand who this He should be. And for that reason, some think, the writing puzzled them. Many, that is repeated, for the thing is certain. Many, that signifies both in Hebrew and Chaldee. He has numbered and finished, which Daniel explains thus: God has numbered thy kingdom, the years and days of the continuance of it. These were numbered in the counsel of God, and now they are finished. The term has expired for and during which thou wast to hold it, and now it must be surrendered. Here is an end of thy kingdom. Tekel, that signifies in Chaldee thou art weighed, and in Hebrew thou art too light. For this king and his actions are weighed in the just and unerring balances of divine equity. God does as perfectly know His true character as the goldsmith knows the weight of that which he has weighed in the nicest scales. God does not give judgment against him till he has first pondered his actions and considered the merits of his case. But thou art found wanting, unworthy to have such a trust lodged in thee, a vain, light, empty man, a man of no weight or consideration. Upharsin, which should be rendered, and Pharsin or Paris in Hebrew signifies the Persians. in Chaldee signifies dividing. Daniel puts both together. Thy kingdom is divided, is rent from thee, and given to the Medes and Persians, as a prey to be divided among them. Now this may, without any force, be applied to the doom of sinners. Many tekel paris may easily be made to signify death, judgment, and hell. At death the sinner's days are numbered and finished. After death the judgment, when he will be weighed in the balance and found wanting. And after the judgment the sinner will be cut asunder and given as prey to the devil and his angels. Daniel does not here give Belshazzar such advice and encouragement to repent as he had given Nebuchadnezzar, because he saw the decree had gone forth, and he would not be allowed any space to repent. One would have thought that Belshazzar would be exasperated against Daniel, and seeing his own case desperate, would be in a rage against him. But he was so far convicted by his own conscience of the reasonableness of all he said that he objected nothing against it, but on the contrary gave Daniel the reward he promised him, put on him the scarlet gown and the gold chain, and proclaimed him third ruler in the kingdom, because he would be as good as his word, and because it was not Daniel's fault if the exposition of the handwriting was not such as he desired. Note, many great respect to God's prophets, who yet have no regard to his word. Many show great respect to God's prophets, who yet have no regard to his word. Daniel did not value these titles and ensigns of honor, yet he would not refuse them, because they were tokens of his prince's goodwill. But we have reason to think that he received them with a smile, foreseeing how soon they would all wither, and with him that bestowed him. They were like Jonah's gourd, which came up in a night and perished in a night, and therefore it was folly for him to be exceedingly glad of them. Verse 30. In that night Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Here is one, the death of the king. Reason enough he had to tremble, for he was just falling into the hand of the king of terrors. In that night, when his heart was merry with wine, the besiegers broke into the city, aimed at the palace where they found the king, and gave him his death's wound. He could not find any place so secret as to conceal him, or so strong as to protect him. Heathen writers speak of Cyrus taking Babylon by surprise, with the assistance of 2 deserters that showed him the best way into the city, and it was foretold what a consternation it would be to the court. Note, death comes as a snare upon those whose hearts are overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness. The transferring of the kingdom into other hands. From the head of gold, we now descend to the breast and arms of silver. Darius the Mede took the kingdom in partnership with, and by consent of, Cyrus, who had conquered it. They were partners in war and conquest, and so they were in dominion. Notice is taken of his age, that he was now 62 years old, for which reason Cyrus, who was his nephew, gave him the precedency. Some observe that, being now 62 years old, in the last year of the captivity, he was born in the 8th year of it, and that was the year when Jeconiah was carried captive, and all the nobles, etc. Just at that time when the most fatal stroke was given, a prince born in the process of time should avenge Jerusalem upon Babylon, and heal the wound that was now given. Thus deep are the counsels of God concerning his people. Thus kind are his designs toward them. And of course there Matthew Henry is referring to the 70 years captivity in his reference to Jerusalem. being avenged. So God designed the punishment, and he designed the avengement of Jerusalem against Babylon in time, 70 years. And that's chapter 5, and that's about all the time we have today. So make sure you share this video and like it and all that stuff, especially when I repost it, or as I repost any of these series, because I'm not getting them posted. I'm getting them done for the replay in the evening, but I'm not able to get them posted in time. But I am posting them within a few days. But whichever ones I post, make sure you click on them and like and share them if possible. I certainly need your help. And I am posting these also on my YouTube channel, which is at Nicholas Arthur, one word, how the YouTube thing, it does that. But the channel is just called Nicholas Arthur. And so I'm posting there. It's an old channel I had a long time ago and kind of forgot about, but I'm reviving it with these series that I'm posting right now. And you'll be able to find a link to those, to the study. Oh yes, the Genesis study that I finished, and the Daniel study. I'll start posting that pretty soon there too. Okay, well, I'm out of time, so I'm going to bid you all farewell. May the Almighty bless you all and keep you as you travel on the narrow way that leads to life. I love you all, and I will see you all next time.